In December 2019, UOL provided the 1983–1984 UOL regulations in response to a FOIA request. To understand LSE's PhD program in the early 1980s, another FOIA request was submitted to LSE for its school regulations in the early 1980s. LSE provided a link to the LSE Institutional Archives housing the LSE calendars from 1895 to 2006. To understand how the school regulations were implemented in the early 1980s, a contemporaneous PhD student file was requested and provided by LSE. The student file is identified as the VV file in the report. Reading the school regulations together, LSE's PhD program in the early 1980s had two stages, the LSE stage and the UOL examination stage. According to the 1980–1981 LSE calendar, students of the school who were reading for degrees or diplomas of the UOL were registered by the school as internal students of the university. The 1983–1984 UOL regulations were the regulations for the internal students proceeding to the degrees of MPhil and PhD. A candidate for a research degree at LSE would be registered initially for the MPhil degree. Every student was required to pursue a regular course of study prescribed by LSE. The minimum length of course for PhD was 2 academic years of full-time study. A student registered for the MPhil degree at LSE was permitted to transfer to registration for the PhD degree. LSE had the power to permit such transfer on the recommendation of the supervisor and informed UOL. A student registered at LSE must have the thesis title approved by his supervisor and notified to UOL on the examination entry form. In summary, the academic activities at the LSE stage included completion of 2 academic years of course, registration transfer from MPhil to PhD, and approval of the final thesis title. Defen Ho is an emeritus professor of the National Taiwan University. On August 29, 2019, she released Wan Lin's independent investigation report in Chinese, entitled, The Authenticity of the Doctoral Thesis and PhD Diplomas of Ng Wen Tsai. On September 2, 2019, President Ng Wen Tsai decided to take legal action against Ho and Lin. Her office emailed Clive Wilson, requesting Tsai's student file. On September 3, 2019, at 10:18, Sue Donnelly, LSE archivist, emailed a copy of Tsai's LSE student file to Tsai's office. On September 4, 2019, Tsai filed a criminal defamation complaint against Lin and Ho with the Taiwan Taipei District Prosecutor's Office, and Tsai's office disclosed 3 documents found in Tsai's LSE student file. One was Tsai's LSE student record. This is the LSE student record found in the VV file. VV and Tsai were registered as MPhil students in the same month, October 1980. The course of study was 2 academic years, from October 1980 to June 1982, 21 months. Their registrations were successfully transferred to PhD degrees. VV's thesis title was approved on December 14, 1982, and Tsai's was approved on January 19, 1983. After completing the prescribed course of study, a student would normally be required to present himself for examination within 1 calendar year. To present for examination, a PhD student must apply to LSE for an entry form. The form must be completed and submitted to the academic registrar at UOL. The LSE Graduate School Office submitted VV's examination entry form to UOL on behalf of VV on March 22, 1983. The date of entry, noted on VV's LSE student record, was March 1983, when VV's examination entry form was submitted to UOL. Submission of the entry form to UOL ended the LSE stage and began the UOL examination stage. In March 1983, VV's LSE stage ended, and the UOL examination stage began. The date of entry, noted on SAI's LSE student record, was June 1983. In the press conference on September 23, 2019, SAI's office displayed a timeline of SAI's PhD journey in the UK based on SAI's LSE student file. It provides no submission date for SAI's examination entry form. According to the timeline, in June 1983, SAI submitted her doctoral thesis for the PhD exam held in October 1983. In other words, in June 1983, SAI's LSE stage ended, and the UOL examination stage began. She submitted her doctoral thesis in the same month when her UOL examination stage began. At the UOL examination stage, a candidate must submit 3 copies of the doctoral thesis for the PhD examination. The candidate must be examined orally by examiners. After the examiners have reached a decision, every candidate would be notified by the academic registrar of the result of his examination. A diploma under the seal of the UOL should be subsequently delivered to each candidate who has been awarded a degree. If a degree was awarded, the thesis presented for examination for the PhD degree must be deposited in the Senate House Library and the library of the appropriate school or institute. In summary, during the UOL examination stage, a PhD candidate was required to submit 3 copies of doctoral thesis for the PhD exam, take an oral exam, and submit at least 2 copies of the examined doctoral thesis to be deposited in the Senate House Library and the appropriate library. UOL was required to notify the Viva result and deliver a PhD diploma to the PhD candidate. In response to a FOIA request for the names of SAI's Viva examiners, the ICO issued a decision notice on November 26, 2021. During the investigation, LSE submitted to the Information Commissioner that in 1984, the UOL was the degree-awarding body responsible for arranging and invigilating Viva examinations. LSE would receive a notification confirming that a particular student had been awarded a degree. LSE still retained SAI's student file, which only dealt with her activities at LSE, and this did not include details of SAI's Viva exam. The Commissioner accepted LSE's submission and concluded that, as the degree-awarding body, it is logical to consider that it would be the university that has the records pertaining to President SAI's examination, and the Commissioner has already established that these records are, as a matter of fact, held by the University of London. According to the Commissioner's findings, a PhD student at LSE in the early 1980s had 2 student files. An LSE student file dealing with the activities at the LSE stage and a UOL student file dealing with the activities at the UOL examination stage. The VV file supports the Commissioner's findings. Only one UOL record relating to the academic activity in the UOL examination stage can be found in the VV file. It is VV's Viva Result Notification Letter issued by the Academic Registrar at UOL on October 5, 1983. The Viva Result Notification Letter was most likely the notification sent by UOL to LSE to confirm that a particular student had been awarded a degree in the early 1980s. SAI's Viva Result Notification Letter issued by G.F. Roberts, UOL Academic Registrar at the time, on February 8, 1984, was another document disclosed by SAI's office on September 4, 2019. The notification date was noted on the LSE student record as the date when the degree was awarded. For VV, it was October 1983. For SAI, it was February 1984. In the VV file, one LSE record shows that VV planned to submit doctoral thesis for the PhD exam in July 1983. It was a cover letter sent with VV's examination entry form to VV's supervisor on March 7, 1983, for the supervisor's signature and recommended examiners. VV's actual thesis submission date cannot be found in the VV file. Except for the planned thesis submission date and the Viva result notification date, no details of VV's Viva exam can be found in the VV file. It is worth noting that the Commissioner made her conclusion based on jurisdiction, not size LSE student file. Size LSE student file is different from the VV file because it contains at least size thesis submission date, June 1983. In addition, Sai submitted her doctoral thesis only once and it was submitted before the PhD exam held in October 1983. One PowerPoint slide used in the press conference on September 23, 2019, shows that Sai passed the oral examination on the spot, and the examiners did not require any revisions or amendments to the content of Sai's doctoral thesis, only misspellings were corrected by hand. Could the examination copies be deposited in the Senate House Library and the library of appropriate school or institute in the early 1980s? The 1998–1999 UOL regulations are the earliest UOL regulations that can be found in the LSE calendars. It provided that the degree shall not be awarded until 2 copies of the successful thesis, bound in the appropriate formats, have been lodged with the academic registrar. The 1983–1984 UOL regulations provided no such requirement. Based on the 1983–1984 UOL regulations, LSE calendars of the early 1980s, and the VV file, it is unclear whether or not examination copies could be deposited in the Senate House Library in the early 1980s. It appears that Sai did not know either, even though she had earned a PhD from LSE in 1984. On September 4, 2019, on behalf of Sai's office, the Taipei Representative Office in the UK emailed Clive Wilson, asking for that procedure and requirements for PhD students to submit their theses in the 1980s and how UOL processed and catalogued the submitted theses. Marcus Cerny, a seasoned higher education administrator who began his career in 1996, was the deputy director at the LSE PhD Academy from 2016 to 2021. Cerny provided the procedure with confidence. Confirmation that the thesis had been passed by examiners, submission of final hardbound copies to Senate House triggering confirmation of award, and placing the final hardbound copies in the library. It indicates that a PhD candidate was required to submit at least 2 final hardbound copies after the Viva exam for deposit of the thesis in the libraries. The 1982–1983 LSE calendar supports the procedure established by Cerny. Under no condition examiners might determine they were satisfied with a thesis without revision or an amendment. In other words, the examination copies must be revised or amended post-Viva. 18 months were given to a PhD candidate to revise the thesis. 1 month to amend the thesis. Therefore, a PhD candidate was required to submit at least 2 final hardbound copies to the Senate House after the PhD exam and after her thesis was revised to the satisfaction of the examiners within 18 months or amended within 1 month. Cerny provided the procedure on September 4, 2019. An email sent from Sai's office on September 18, 2019, indicates that Sai's office accepted the procedure provided by Cerny. A PhD degree is only awarded once a candidate has provided a copy of the successful thesis. A copy of the successful thesis can only be provided after a successful PhD exam. Sai's story about her PhD journey in the UK changes over time. On November 30, 2022, Sai's attorney submitted to the Taiwan Taipei District Court that, after the PhD exam, Sai added 4 pages to her doctoral thesis, including the "To My Parents" page, the acknowledgements page, and a 2-page abstract. However, the UOL email dated June 29, 2015, indicated that Sai only submitted her doctoral thesis once. It was before the Viva exam on June 15, 2019. In addition, adding an abstract after the PhD exam violated the 1983–1984 UOL regulations. Every candidate was required to present a short abstract of his thesis of not more than 300 words and bound with each copy of the thesis submitted to the university. 1 additional loose copy of the abstract must also be provided. The Viva result notification letter was triggered to confirm the award once the final hardbound copies were submitted to the Senate House. Subsequently, the submitted hardbound copies were deposited in the Senate House Library and the library of appropriate school or institute. The Viva result notification letter also notified the candidate that you will receive a diploma bearing the date of award of the degree after its formal conferment on the authority of the Senate or the Vice-Chancellor acting on its behalf. It indicates the Viva result notification letter was issued before formal conferment. The PhD diploma was issued after the award was confirmed by the Viva result notification letter and after the formal conferment. Therefore, the official date of award in the early 1980s was the date shown on the PhD diploma. The last document disclosed by Psy's office on September 4, 2019, was Psy's PhD diploma. For Psy, the official date of award was March 14, 1984. In summary, LSE's PhD program in the early 1980s was divided into two stages. At the LSE stage, a PhD student had to complete 2 academic years of course of study, complete registration transfer from MPhil to PhD, and get the final thesis title approved. He then submitted the examination entry form to enter the UOL examination stage. During the UOL examination stage, the PhD candidate must submit 3 copies of the thesis for the PhD exam, take the Viva exam, and submit at least 2 final hardbound copies of the examined thesis to trigger the Viva result notification letter. UOL then deposited the final hardbound copies in the Senate House Library and the appropriate library and delivered PhD diploma to the PhD candidate after the formal conferment. As the LSE student record, it summarized the academic activities at the LSE stage. There were no thesis submission dates before and after the PhD exam, no PhD exam date, and no date of PhD award can be found in the LSE student record. The date of entry was not the date of thesis submission. It was the day when the PhD candidate presented himself for the examination by submitting the examination entry form. On the date of entry, the LSE stage ended and the UOL examination stage began. The date entered under the result was the Viva result notification date, the date the award was confirmed, not the date the PhD degree was officially awarded or the PhD diploma was issued. When the thesis was not submitted 18 months after the entry form was submitted, he was required to submit a re-entry form to present himself for the examination again. In the LSE student record, there are 3 more spaces for re-entries to the Viva exam. Could Psy's date of entry and date of thesis submission be the same? Both in June 1983?